I'm Alan Mitchell, and welcome to NECIC's AALI Speaks. Today, we have with us Jason Larson, who's here to talk to us and give us some voter education on the Richland County Property Tax Additional Ballot Initiative for our county park system. Jason, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are.
Good morning. Thank you again for having us here. My name is Jason Larson. I'm the director of the Richland County Park District. I've been the director since 2013. I took over for Steve McKee, who was the director for about 40 years. We have a small park district, so as the director, I sort of wear all different hats, not only doing administrative work, but helping out with education programs, bird walks, owl prowls, nature programs, fundraising. It's a little bit of everything. So, and basically my goal is to just get the word out about the parks as much as we can to let the residents of Richland County know, what we have available to them, whether that's programs or grant opportunities or what have you.
So let's get to it. Why do we need an additional property tax levy to support the Richland County Parks District?
So the Park District was created about 58 years ago, and the funding for the Park District has basically come through the generosity of the Richland County Commissioners out of the general fund, and most county park systems aren't funded that way. That's just the way that it's always been done through the Richland County Park District. And each year the commissioners grant us a certain amount of money funding to operate the Park District, and in addition to that, the Park District's always relied heavily on volunteers and grants to accomplish the work that we do, in addition to the small amount of funding that we get. And as economic conditions have dictated over time, that funding has been limited primarily to provide basic day-to-day operations, operating expenses, and with little funding available for any kind of capital improvements or growth or development. And so a very small amount of that, you can only do so much with what's available. So a couple of years ago, our Friends group, Friends of the Richland County Park District, recognized that with the park board and the staff that further improvement and development of the district required a dedicated source of funding. And when you go into the commissioners every year, it's a matter of, can you get raises, can you get additional funds, is the economy bad that year, don't ask for more money. And so sometimes you have to make cuts and you don't know exactly what your budget's going to be or what you're going to be able to do. So having a levy would enable us to know every year there's a certain dedicated amount of funding coming in and additional funds on top of that. So the Friends provided a grant for the Park District to engage with a consultant and put together our strategic plan for the next 10 years. And part of that was that we looked at everything that encompassed the Park District, and it was determined that getting a levy and getting that dedicated source of funding for the growth that we want to accomplish was what was necessary.
Jason, you mentioned services. What does the Park District provide here in Richland County?
Well, we have a number of community parks throughout the county, things that you may or may not know about, and that's one of the things we're always trying to do is educate folks about the County Park District. Obviously, Gorman Nature Center down on State Route 42 between Lexington and Mansfield, the B&O Bike Trail, which extends from Mansfield all the way down to Butler, our multi-purpose trail that's 18 miles long. And then some more rural parks like the new Fleming Falls Preserve out on State Route 42 and Hemlock Falls down by the old out-of-door school. So one of the goals is that we provide outdoor spaces for people to go to, different from than what a community park would be, where you have playground equipment and things like that. More of the idea that you're going to a place like the Hocking Hills or Mohican. So providing spaces for people to go out and do passive recreation, whether that's hiking, walking their dogs, bird watching, nature, and those types of things, which you may not be able to get in a community park setting, and that's a lot what we do. We provide a lot of programming for the general public, all types of nature programs, and opportunities for people to come out and learn about stewardship and environment and conservation. One of the big things that we do that typically you don't see with a lot of park districts is that we provide educational opportunities for the local schools. And basically we're able to provide free educational opportunities about the environment, conservation, nature, stewardship, like I said, to any school within Richland County, any school outside of Richland County. We have a lot of people that come in from the counties outside that will either go to them or they'll come to us, and basically we'll integrate those teachings into their curriculum and what have you, and the kids get to come out, and we do that for free. And we probably on a normal year would see between 15 and 20,000 students. And we want to be able to improve upon that, giving more opportunities, because we know places like Mansfield, for instance, it's hard to get busing or funding for people to come out to us, so we're able to go out to the schools and do that. We provide a lot of education for the community. People call us all the time and ask us nature-related questions or environmental-related questions. I've got a baby bird, what do I do with it? And trying to put people at ease, to know that they're trying to be involved and to do something that they know is important, and what we can do to help them. So we do a little bit of everything, and the big role is educating the public as best as we can about the environment that they live in.
Well, how many parks inside the city of Mansfield are managed by the county park district?
Right now, currently none. Obviously, Mansfield has its own park system, which has had multiple issues over the years, and they have a lot of land. But the one that we do maintain would be the B&O Bike Trail. So the B&O Bike Trail extends, as I previously mentioned, from North Lake Park in Mansfield all the way down to Butler through Lexington and Belleville as well. So we maintain that section. That would be from North Lake Park. For Mansfield proper would probably go down to about Millsboro, or where Home Road Marsh is, down by Alta Greenhouse. That's primarily the only unit that we really take care of now that would be in the city of Mansfield proper.
If that trail were to be extended as anticipated, would you maintain that also?
If we had the funding to do so, yeah, that would be. I would love to see the trail go up through Mansfield and out towards Ashland or up towards the northern parts of the county. We also will be. We're under an agreement with the city of Mansfield when the Trimble Road extension goes in, hopefully in the next couple of years, between Home Road down off the bike trail up to Trimble. We will manage that piece of property in terms of the general maintenance of mowing along the edges, blowing leaves off, and things like that. So we have entered into that agreement, and hopefully, if the levy comes to pass, we may even take over full management and responsibility for that piece of land and that trail itself. But again, the funding would be necessary for that to happen.
So what's the relationship between the city parks and the Richland County Park District?
The parks themselves, I would say, our biggest relationship is collaboration. So a lot of times events that happen related in the Mansfield City Parks will get a hold of or talk with the Richland Park District about coming up and doing events. So we spend a lot of time down at places like North Lake Park, South Park, Middle Park, coming down during the summer, and when there are different types of activities that are going on, we bring out our educational animals, we do programming on site. I would say right now that's our biggest thing. We collaborate when we can about, again, like the issue with the Trimble Road Trail, about, how can we help out the park, the Mansfield Parks in terms of what they do. Anytime, I've always said that our expertise is available as our time and resources are available to the Mansfield City Park should they want us to come examine the nature of an area, like a place like John Todd Park. Can you help us come identify wildflowers or nature that's there? So again, those services are always available to collaborate with the parks as we have the time available. But what we're really hoping to do is do more of the education. I know, talking with my education director, is being able to look at, if Mansfield City Parks can't come to the Nature Center, or Mansfield City Parks, excuse me, if Mansfield City Schools can't come to Gorman Nature Center, for us to be able to go out to their schools, even if we'd like to do something nature related, could we get the kids either walking or short-term, distance busing? Could we get them to one of these parks and actually do the on-site activities like they would have when they came to Gorman? Could we actually do those at places like North Lake Park or John Todd Park, and be able to use those facilities better?
So, question begs asking, Why did public Mansfield City Parks have to close and be given to the land bank only to be made available for private gain instead of being transferred to the county park district?
Well, when the Mansfield City Parks initially went under, I wasn't around back then. I would assume that was obviously the economy and the funds weren't there. So the parks just sat there in the meantime. Why they were given to the county park system at that time would, again, my assumption would be that the funding just wasn't available. So in all honesty, if they would have been given to the park district, we could have land banked them, we could have sat on them and said they're part of the park district, but we wouldn't have been able to do any development because the funding wasn't there. Now, if we had had a levy, if we had a budget that was much higher at the time, and the park district had gone under, and the funding wasn't available, and all these parks were sitting there, the possibility could have been that they could have approached the county park system and said, would you be willing to either take these over and make them part of the park district, or could you at least help us manage them? And a lot of times, I know I talked with you earlier about how, for example, some county park districts will manage pieces of land for natural areas and preserves, or ODNR, and say, we have a limited budget, we'd like you to manage this. And so it's still ours, but it's sort of part of your park district now. So I think that was the biggest thing at the time, was just the funding wasn't available for the Mansfield parks to function, and we didn't have the capacity to take on all that extra land. I mean, another example of that would be right now, we've got a lot of pieces of property around the county that have been purchased by land trusts recently, West Creek and Western Reserve, the NIST property out on between Marion and Cook Roads. There's another big property out by the reservoir. And we had been approached originally by those folks to say, we'd like to give these to the park district. And of course I said, that'd be wonderful, but I said, I can't do that without the funding. If we get a levy someday, I'd be the first one to knock on your door and say, we would love to manage that and make it a county park system.
So what other park district services or strategic partnerships are improving the lives of North End residents?
I think, like I said, the biggest thing is the collaboration with the education. If we can get out, getting the kids in the city of Mansfield, kids that lead an urban life, to understand and appreciate what the natural world is about, and whether that's them coming to Gorman Nature Center, whether that's coming and having us utilize local parks that are in disuse or in disrepair. What can we utilize those places for, is utilizing the capacity that we have, the limited funding and budget that we have to educate the younger generation about why it's important to have green spaces. And I think right now that's our biggest partnership. I think what we could do as well, if we are able to secure the levy, is be able to help potentially manage some of these parks. And if that funding becomes available, to say, we're willing to work with the Mansfield parks or potentially take over some of these parks. I mean, that's total speculation on my part. It would require the staff and the board and everybody to agree to, those types of things. But I think there are a lot of the Mansfield City Parks that, like I said, the infrastructure's there. It's just having the ability to manage the funding to do the mowing, the trail maintenance, any buildings that are there, provide programming. And so I think that ends up being the big partnership, is how we can provide our services to the city of Mansfield through either education with the schools or being able to collaborate with the existing park system that exists in Mansfield, and how we can use our services and our abilities to help maintain or better utilize and the resources that are there.
So what happens if this levy were to fail?
If the levy fails, then we pretty much stay where we are. We continue to look for additional funding through grants, trying to find volunteers, and I've always said, and you guys work a lot with volunteers and you do a lot with grants, it takes a lot of time to organize volunteers, find volunteers, retain volunteers. They're wonderful people, and we could do 95% of what happens on the bike trail is volunteers. And where do you get that money? You hope that it's going to come from the county commissioners. Is there going to be a budget cut? Can you get that grant this year to hire on those interns? And so having that levy allows us to say we know exactly how much funding is going to come in every year, or generally so, to be able to budget that out, to know exactly what we're going to be able to do and what we're going to be able to offer. The biggest thing is that we just won't be able to expand our services. We won't be able to provide for all the things that we'd hoped for, like more restrooms along the bike trail and more access to new pieces of land that are available, more hours out at a place like the Fleming Falls Preserve, where we've only got it open on the weekends now because we need the staff, we need the resources to put in restrooms and trash removal and things of that nature. So we'll continue to do what we do in the best capacity that we can with the funding that's available to offer as many programs to the local schools and keep our facilities that are open available. Just won't have the ability to do more and expand.
Well, conversely, are you able to use these funds, should the levy pass, to accomplish something innovative and provide service to Richland County residents that are currently unavailable?
Well, I think the biggest thing, like we've alluded to it before, and I talked with you earlier about, I think one of the things could be that we could help the Mansfield City Parks potentially manage a lot of the parks that are failing. What do we do with a place like John Todd, or especially using our skill set in terms of natural resources management and working with invasive species and working with stewardship. It may not be that we have the ability to know how to manage everything in terms of a structure or a golf course or something like that, but there are certain aspects of those parks that we could definitely step in and say, you may not need to exactly give them to the park district, but we could potentially manage them. So you might see the ability to get in and take places like John Todd Park or North Lake Park and make some improvements there if the levy became available and we were able to do that. I know one of the things we had been talking about too is potentially offering grant money. If, for example, if we have money that's come countywide, is that anybody that's having trouble passing a levy for a park district or for park services could come to us potentially and say, we'd like to apply for some of these funds that you have available to put in a new playground or something along those lines. So we're trying to think outside of the box about how we can, come to folks like the city of Mansfield and say, how is the park district going to benefit the people who live in this area or the north end, and say we want to be able to, get out there. I think the biggest thing, though, is using those funds and that ability to get out to folks and really try to let them know what the parks have available, to educate, to get people out and know what's available to them and the services that we can provide for them.
Your staff does some amazing work, your volunteers also. Can you give us a quick anecdote about, something that they've done in the last couple of years that may not have made the news?
One of my personal stories that I always find one of my favorites is, again, we've always got people who want to come out and, can you come to our preschool? Can you come to places like the Friendly House? And a couple of years ago, the Friendly House wanted us to come out and do a program in February, and it was for a Girl Scout group that was meeting there after school. And my education director talked to me, and I said, sure, I'd love to go out and do a program for them. What do they want? They want a program on insects. Okay, well, it's February. There's not very many insects flying around in February, so I'm like, okay, that's all right. I've got some things here. I've got, a hornet's nest and other stuff I'll take in there, and we'll go talk about those things. So I went there, and there was a group of young ladies that, about 20 of them, and we were inside, and it was fun, but it was a decent day out, and I thought, I'm looking around and thinking, let's go outside, let's go look around. And you get out into the back of the Friendly House, there's not really very much out there, it's a playground, and it's mulch, and there's a tree over here or whatever, so it's like, no, I'm not in the woods, but we started digging around, and I was amazed. All these young ladies from the inner city, you think they'd all be going, ew, bugs. They were all digging in the ground with me, and they were scraping around. We were finding worms and pill bugs and centipedes, and they were having a ball. I went back and I thought, it was putting the silver lining on. You always try to say, I'm going to go do this program. And I'm looking at the situation, and I'm looking at the circumstances, and I'm thinking, this is going to be horrible. How are we going to make this work? And when I got there, it all came together, and it gives me more understanding every day about being able to look at opportunities and say, how can we make this work? And being able to shoot from the hip and work on the fly, and it turned out to be an amazing day. And I know there were kids that ended up coming to the nature center after that who had been part of that because they were just totally intrigued by things that were in their backyard that they never knew could be there. So it's always fun things like that you find out with the staff. The volunteers, again, we've got the greatest volunteers in the world. You alluded to that. You spoke of it, and especially on the bike trail. We just couldn't do the things that we do on the bike trail without volunteers. And we hear stories all the time because we have, bias totally that we have one of the best bike trails in Ohio, if not the Midwest. The entire thing is paved. It goes through the country. It goes through municipalities, and I'm always, it's makes me feel good that I always hear these stories of where people will be bumping into our volunteers all the time and just praising them and giving them so much thanks about how wonderful the trail is and how we're able to do that. And you hear that people come from all over. It's not just Mansfield. It's people from all over the eastern United States come and use this trail. And so it makes me feel good that we've got a lot of people out that are dedicated to making this a wonderful part of the park district when we can't be out there ourselves all the time, and they're out there praising what we do, and we're trying to praise them at the same time to have those resources available.
Well, to your point, parks generate tourism, and 5.65 mil. Is that enough to keep up with the needs of our community?
We hope so. I mean, it was part of looking at the strategic plan, and when it takes a lot of time to sit down with somebody and really look those things over, and you don't want to ask for too much, you don't want to ask for too little. Most of the people we've talked to from different park districts and things, came in and said, wow, are you asking for 10 years? I mean, they didn't even know. And we're going for 10 years. Well, that's good, because if you ask for 3 years or 5 years, you're not going to do anything but spend your time trying to pass a levy, because there's so much turnover. So you need time to be able to establish that you've got the funding, and then you can start to implement your plan. So we looked at the time period and thought, that looks good for what we're trying to set up with our strategic plan in terms of the growth. The amount was just, again, looking at the budget. Did we want to go with a $500,000, a $750,000 and it was just basically trying to say we don't want to go out there and just throw a huge levy on to say we need all this money. We wanted to really look at our budget with staffing, capital improvements, education, programming, and say, is this going to be enough? And we determined through our consultants and looking at our staffing and looking at our programming that we think that 0.65 is enough to slowly grow the staff over time, to slowly grow capital improvements, and put in more things like restrooms and things of that nature, more opportunities for programming in the schools, education. Is it perfect? We don't know, but we hope that over the course of that 10 years, going up into 4 or 5, 6 year and into the levy, we'll be able to look at that budget, look at the activities that have been going on, and say, yeah, that we were right. We were, that was just about what we needed. Now, maybe 10 years down the line, we need to reevaluate and say, well, we probably should have done 0.75 or 1 mil. And it's a lot of comparison as well. It's looking at the other counties around you that have had levies. What's the size of their demographics? How many people are in their county? How rural is it? How urban is it? What was their levy? Was it successful? Talking with them. So fortunately, we've got a lot of counties around us that have had levies, and so we've been able to talk with them as well to say, did that work for you? Based on your population in Crawford County, which is probably half of what Richland County is, their levy was this. Did that work well? Were you able to get what you needed? Yes. So you extrapolate to say, okay, based on our population and demographics, then we would probably need this. So it's not an exact science, but we didn't want to come in either and say, well, we need a 3 mil levy, and gosh, that's, what are you gonna do with all that money? And it's like, well, I'm sure we could find something for it, but, we don't wanna just have a ton of money. The good thing with a levy is that it doesn't go back into the general fund at the end of the year. So if you don't use your budget, it rolls into the general fund, and then you get your next budget. With the levy, you want to be able to use your money that you said every year we're going to use this, but if for some reason you had a capital improvement project that got held up for funding or lack of resources, and it was, $150,000, you could say, well, that's going to go, it's going to roll over. So next year we're going to get all the levy money plus that 150,000's there. Now we can throw that into this project this year and make it happen. So it's a nice thing to know that you've got that money, that you can roll it over and you can keep it and then apply it to things in case there's something that gets held up, as opposed to saying, well, it just goes back into the budget and you don't get it, and hopefully you can ask for it again next year and that it didn't go anywhere. So,
Jason, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for the great work that you and your staff do. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and helping to inform the voters of the North End about the upcoming opportunity.
Well, again, I want to thank you for having me here today to represent the Park District, and we hope that folks will think about the levy and think about what it could do for our community, and we hope that if we're given that opportunity, we'll be able to do some great things for the county.
I'm sure you will. Thanks so much.
Thank you.